Hey, welcome to Remote Falcon Deep Dive, Episode 1. With this being the first episode, it's probably a good idea to give you a bit of an overview on what to expect from this deep dive series. The purpose of the deep dive videos is to provide a closer look into certain features in Remote Falcon, as opposed to previous videos and presentations that covered the entire application. The hope is that I can help foster a deeper understanding of some of those features and configurations that tend to be a bit more confusing. And what better to start off with than the Jukebox Sequence Request Limit? Now, first off, this setting is honestly already confusing because of the terrible name. So if you have any ideas on how to better name this, leave a comment below. The idea behind this setting, though, is to control how soon a sequence can be requested again if it already exists in the queue. So let's take a deeper dive into this terribly named Jukebox Sequence Request Limit. And to help make this easier to visualize, I've set the request limit to 2. Currently, the jukebox queue is empty, so any one of these sequences can be requested at this point. To start, we're going to pick sequence 1 and sequence number 2. And now we can see both of these have been added to the queue. Now, to add to the visualization here, we'll add some numbers next to the sequences in the queue to indicate their depth from the most recently requested to the oldest requested. Now, let's see what happens if I try to request sequence number 1 again. Now, as you can see, we get this message saying that the sequence has already been requested. But why do we get that? Let's walk through what's actually happening. Now, when sequence 1 was selected, the first thing Remote Falcon did was check the value of the request limit, which, as you recall, we have set to 2. Remote Falcon then used that value to get the 2 most recent requests from the queue. Because sequence 1 was part of the 2 most recent requests, it was not allowed to be queued. Now, if we try to select sequence 2, we can see the same thing happens, because sequence 2 is part of the 2 most recent requests. So the only option left for us to select is sequence number 3. Now, with the updated numbers on our queue, we can now see that sequence 2 and sequence 3 are labeled 1 and 2. Now what happens if we try to select sequence 1? If we look at the 2 most recent requests, we can see that sequence 1 is not included in those. That means we are able to make that request. Now, as far as where you should set this number, that's something for you to decide, but you should be careful setting the number to the same number or more than the number of sequences that you have to choose from. For example, what would happen if we set this value to 3 and then cleared our queue? So I can request sequence 1, sequence 2, and I can request sequence 3. But according to our recent queue depth here, I cannot request any more sequences, because sequence 1, 2, and 3 are all included in the 3 most recent requests. So it's important to test your settings and make sure that they work for you and your show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them below. And finally, if you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, be sure to subscribe. Cheers.